In July 2021, a group of archaeologists were in northern France carrying out excavations in search of remains of Gallo-Roman settlements from 2,000 years ago. Their search brought them face to face with a much more recent and tragic past, the prison camp of La Glaciere, set up shortly after the epic Allied victory in Normandy. La Glaciere is unique in having housed tens of thousands of German soldiers who, willingly or by force, were taken prisoner. This triggered the first archaeological expedition on World War II carried out in France. In this episode of Military History, we want to tell you about the imprisonment process of hundreds of thousands of Nazi soldiers after the victory in Normandy. Join us to learn everything about it. Helmet Roer was a young 18-year-old German soldier, one of the first Nazis to come face to face with the Allied invasion in the heart of Europe, in the campaign that had D-Day as its historic moment. Roer was not in Normandy beaches, but he was awake the night before when the first airborne troops attacked. On the night of June 5, 1944, Roer was a guard at the Pegasus Bridge, located on the Caen Canal. The young man expected another routine night, but from the skies came a roar. The lookout assumed that a ship had been shot down, but suddenly he spotted speeders capable of carrying up to 30 soldiers. The boats made landfall and hundreds of British soldiers with their faces painted black got out and immediately opened fire. Roer was not heroic, he simply gave the warning, lit a flare to alert and prepared to run for his life. In retrospect, it was a correct decision. Under Operation Deadstick, the Allied forces decided that the bridges along the canal and near the River Orne should be taken, as they were used by the Germans to send reinforcements. These were points of strategic importance, and no inexperienced young man could stand in the way of the liberation of France. Roer's case was one of hundreds of thousands of Germans who lived through one of the bloodiest and most important moments of World War II. While its relevance often overshadows other equally or even more crucial operations, D-Day went down in history for good reason. The process of liberation of the territories of Eastern Europe was long and painful. After the D-Day landings, German surrenders were constant but small in number. By June 9, 1944, only 4,000 Nazi soldiers had been taken prisoner. After 9 days, the number increased to 15,000, and by the end of the month the total number was 47,000 people. The following months were fluctuating, many Germans died from injuries and lack of supplies to care for the victims on both sides. In all, the Normandy campaign is credited with a total of 200,000 Third Reich prisoners. The increase in surrenders in Normandy was directly related to the successful invasions carried out in the south of France in mid-August. The German troops operating within French territory began to be isolated and without communication or supplies, in terrible conditions to resist the increasingly powerful Allied advance. It is estimated that, during September 1944 alone, about 344,000 German soldiers became prisoners of war, or POWs. It was one of the most significant losses in the entire war. It is clear that the symptoms of German defeat were already several months before the Battle of Berlin. To put that number in perspective, over the course of the entire war, 173,000 British soldiers were taken prisoner. In 1 month, Germany lost twice as many troops. After the D-Day landings, camps for German prisoners of war were organized. After taking Cherbourg and the Cotentin Peninsula, the Allies stopped sending prisoners to facilities outside of Europe. This is how camp complexes such as La Glaciere, established by North American authorities in August 1944, arose. This was the first of several similar camps set up in the region, and in August 1945, exactly 1 year after it was put into operation, it was delivered to the French authorities to carry out the corresponding processes. La Glaciere was finally closed in October 1946. Studies of photographs and documents from the time show that there were numerous prison camps in the community of La Glaciere, each one named with some type of reference. But its identification becomes more complicated since when it passed into the hands of France, most of these facilities changed their names. The reference number for La Glaciere is unknown, so it is a problem to apply the written documents and photographs. Thus, archaeology is an important key to unite all this information, creating a map of the Nazi prison camps. Of course, the testimonies of those who are still alive are also essential. In 1957, the German government undertook a series of interviews with former prisoners from these camps. One of them described how, after the search, groups of 6 prisoners were randomly formed to live together. Finally, they were given elements to raise their own tent. According to the former prisoner, these tents were not waterproof, so they had to reinforce the floor with cardboard and empty corn cans. In the excavations it is possible to see the wells and the spatial delimitations of each tent and the structures for the North American officers. Nazi prisoners worked in the port, and during the unloading of the ships they used to take rations from the American soldiers. These stolen items were used to improve their living conditions, and cigarettes as a bargaining chip among the inmates. The prisoners had some freedom and could build a kind of community within the camps. There are no records of systematic mistreatment or any type of torture, although it is clear that the U.S. officials had no interest in making the stay of the POWs more comfortable. In other prison camps throughout France, German prisoners had to provide the labor to rebuild the country. An estimated 1 million Germans participated in this work, and all came from U.S.-run camps until 1946. Although food was scarce and camp work was hard, for many prisoners this was better than being sent to their devastated homeland, where there was neither food nor employment. More than 2.8 million German soldiers surrendered on the Western Front between D-Day and the last days of April 1945. These surrenders seriously weakened the German army, and prompted further surrenders throughout the territory, a sort of snowball effect. The number of prisoners on this front used to be higher, as those Germans who faced the Red Army used to fight to the death, and those who survived were usually executed by the Soviets. Their mutual hatred was too much to live as a prisoner. This is how we come to the end of the video. If you want to know more facts that set the story on fire, we invite you to subscribe and activate notifications. Until the next episode of Military History, thanks for joining us.